Marriage can be full of surprises, but what if the biggest surprise is that your spouse is an elite assassin? Let's dive into the full story of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. John and Jane's story begins in Bogota, Colombia. The police surrounded the hotel because of the assassination of a mafia boss. They were only looking for people traveling alone. When the police started searching for lone foreigners, they instinctively paired up to avoid suspicion, because both were undercover, using false identities and pretending to be tourists. From that moment on, they bumped into each other and sparks flew. They drank and danced together into the pouring rain. The next morning, Jane Smith woke up in a strange place, only to find that the stranger from last night had prepared a delicious breakfast. Love at first sight wasn't about liking someone after just one look, but after that one look, they were already deep in each other's hearts. Their chemistry was immediate, intense, and undeniable. A whirlwind romance followed, leading to a quick marriage. Their friend didn't understand how they could think this was a good decision when they had only known each other for 6 months. When Jane Smith told her friends about the marriage, they thought it was too fast. Their friends thought they would last 6 months at the most, but in the blink of an eye, 5 or 6 years had passed and they had lived a happy life. But now life was mundane, lacking the passion of their early marriage. They argued over trivial matters. Their routine is designed to appear normal, but it's painfully too perfect, just another part of their deception. Every evening, Jane Smith would be the first to arrive home and, as usual, cook a table full of dishes. They ate dinner in silence, barely talking and avoiding meaningful interaction. They went about their own business, paying no attention to each other. At bedtime, they lay side by side, both absorbed in the newspaper, speaking less and less each night, each with secrets unknown to the other. Oh my, what a life! One day, John reminded her about the neighbor's dinner party, but Jane put on a sleek black trench coat for work. As she left, she promised to be back on time. It turned out that John had plans of his own. Jane stopped at a hotel while John went to a bar. Jane was escorted to a luxury suite by bodyguards. Jane took a risk. She entered Marco Racin's suite, unfastened her trench coat, pulled out her hairpin, and let her dark waves fall.
Even if they get punished.
Punish me.
You've been selling big guns.
And it turned out that Jane was an assassin. She made her escape, landing smoothly next to a taxi, casually fixing her hair before heading home. Meanwhile, John entered a hidden casino inside the bar. He pushed open the door to a high-stakes poker game with only one seat left. The 3 men at the table told him the seat was taken, but John refused to leave. One of them subtly flashed a gun, but John just smiled and showed his stack of cash. He could afford to play. John was enjoying himself. That's when the missing player finally arrived. It was then that John's true identity was revealed. He wasn't just another gambler. He was a top assassin working for a deadly organization. After finishing their own business, that night, Jane and John attended the neighbor's dinner party, slipping back into their everyday roles. The men talked business while the women gossiped about their husbands. One woman gushed about her husband's promotion and suddenly asked Jane if she'd like to babysit. Jane just smiled because babysitting was the last thing she was made for. You can tell by the look on his face, right? The next day, John arrives at the office. Guess what? The office is just a cover to hide his hitman job. John is on his own, but not Jane. In her office, she works with a full team, a different level, sophisticated and well-funded. They both get assignments with the same objective. The target, Benjamin Danz, currently being held by military intelligence and soon to be transferred across the border to a federal prison. Their job is to eliminate him on the way. John Smith walked into the garage and unlocked a hidden basement that doubled as his secret headquarters. This was the real John Smith, surrounded by weapons, stacks of cash, and high-tech equipment. He packed a box with the essentials for an upcoming mission. Meanwhile, Jane Smith was also preparing, wondering why she had spent years cooking when she had far more dangerous skills. As it turned out, the kitchen was more than it seemed. The dishwasher wasn't just for washing dishes, it was a hidden arsenal filled with pistols and daggers. In the field, they have prepared their respective strategies. Jane watches her trap from a distance. Suddenly, John arrives in his car to break Jane's trap and raises a bazooka. Jane, not knowing the man was John, immediately shot him. John, angry and not knowing it was Jane who shot him, immediately responded with his bazooka. Suddenly, a bomb planned by Jane exploded at the wrong time. Chaos ensued, throwing both operations into disarray. Jane made a split-second decision to abandon the mission and escape on a motorcycle, while John arrived at the now-destroyed cabin to find nothing but the smashed remains of a computer. Both missions had failed. Back at their respective headquarters, they each filed their reports. But John's investigation led him to track down the dealer of the destroyed computer. Right to the address of Jane's organization. John found the CEO to be his own wife. The revelation stunned him. Wow. At the same time, Jane was reviewing surveillance footage of an unidentified agent. His posture, his movements. Her heart pounded as the realization hit. My God, that's her husband. At home, Jane welcomed home dinner, and John Smith immediately tensed. John, who was on guard, threw away the drink for fear of being poisoned and kept a knife in his shirt. They continued their conversation, pretending everything was normal. Jane mentioned that someone had been stealing her company's clients. And who was the culprit? None other than John Smith. Keeping his composure, John smoothly picked up the wine bottle and poured her a generous glass. To test Jane, John deliberately dropped the bottle of drink, and as expected,
honey?
John accidentally shot Jane. The bullet struck Jane's windshield. Jane, who was upset, immediately bumped into John. For 6 years, they had been husband and wife, but tonight they were assassins on opposite sides. If they truly had to eliminate each other, it wouldn't be easy, because despite everything, they were still in love.
We need to talk!
That night, John Smith sought comfort from a friend who had always been skeptical of women, insisting they couldn't be trusted. Meanwhile, Jane Smith turned to a colleague who urged her not to hesitate. After all, as an assassin, eliminating a target was part of the job. But neither found peace. John lay awake in his friend's bed, unable to sleep, while Jane wrestled with conflicting emotions. At dawn, Jane and her team stormed their home, searching every inch of it. She watched, silently conflicted, as a colleague tore apart her old doll and flipped through her wedding photos before callously tossing them aside. Elsewhere, John didn't return home right away. Instead, he invited over a nosy neighbor who had always wanted to visit, unaware that he was now serving as John's shield. Slipping into the basement, John discovered that his weapons, cash, and ammunition were gone. Determined to end things, Jane ordered her team to dig into John's past. But little did she know that John had already tracked her to her company's headquarters. The alarm sounded. Intruders had breached the roof. With no time to waste, Jane's team sprang into action, deleting files, wiping hard drives, and preparing for their escape. Explosion shattered window after window as they ziplined to the adjacent building. Meanwhile, John advanced through a hidden passageway and approached Jane's office. But by the time he arrived, she was gone, standing triumphantly on the rooftop across from him. John had a clean shot. He could end it right there, but he didn't pull the trigger. He dug deeper, tracking down a real estate company he suspected was Jane's new hideout. As he entered the building and stepped into the elevator, he sensed something was wrong. Moments later, the elevator stopped, trapping him inside. It was a trap. Jane's voice came over the loudspeaker. "Leave while you still can," she offered, "or I'll set off the bomb." John grinned, unshaken. "Do you have any idea what I'm capable of?" Before Jane could answer, one of her subordinates pressed the detonator. In an instant, the elevator exploded, its surveillance feed flickering to static. The steel box plummeted 70 floors, bursting into flames on impact. Jane stood frozen. He was gone. The man she had spent 6 years with, the man she had loved, was dead. Or so she thought. In the smoldering wreckage, John felt a cold realization settle over him. If Jane had truly wanted him dead, this should have been the end. But he had anticipated her move. By disabling the surveillance, he had slipped into another elevator just in time. Jane found herself in the restaurant where John had once proposed to her, her mind clouded with memories, tears silently streaming down her face. Just then, a familiar presence settled beside her. A man poured her a drink. She didn't have to look. She already knew it was John, but this wasn't a reunion. It was the beginning of the end. This time there were no romantic gestures, no whispered promises, just the cold, inescapable truth. Then, in an unexpected twist, John held out his hand. "One last dance?" he asked, but the moment couldn't last. As John subtly disarmed Jane, she did the same to him. They were locked in an endless game of deception, even in the middle of a slow dance. Jane excused herself to the bathroom. Moments later, an explosion rocked the building. Chaos ensued, and in the confusion, Jane disappeared. John rushed outside, but before he could act, an old man stopped him. There was a small time bomb strapped to his jacket. John hijacked a car and called Jane. Twice now she had tried to kill him. There was only one place to go: home. John pulled up to the house. Jane crashed her car into his. She made it into the garage first. Inside, Jane was already in position, waiting for him. The fight was on. John ran to the third floor, moving like a shadow, and pulled out his hidden gun. Meanwhile, Jane was one step ahead, unleashing a relentless spray of bullets down the staircase. They weaved through their own home, engaged in a brutal game of cat and mouse.
Come on, honey.
Who's your daddy now?
And yet, when the moment of truth arrived, neither could pull the trigger. Standing face to face, guns pointed at each other, time seemed to freeze. John was the first to lower his gun, Jane did the same. They couldn't do it. After 6 years of marriage, after everything they'd been through, killing each other was the one thing they couldn't bring themselves to do. Instead, the lost passion of love was rekindled. In the morning, they looked very intimate. The smiles that had been missing were back on their faces, but not with their boss. Since neither of them had followed through, the only option left was to wipe them both out. A smoke grenade crashed through the window. Without hesitation, John grabbed Jane's hand and pulled her toward the basement. They stole a car from an unsuspecting neighbor and hit the road. 3 cars were in pursuit. John loaded his gun. Jane climbed into the back seat to get to the weapons stash, but the car's wild swerving made it difficult. At this point, teamwork was their only option.
I can't believe I brought my real parents.
They met John's friend who had assumed Jane was dead. Seeing them together, battered but somehow still standing, his expression turned grim. He explained, "Both sides want you dead. If you split up, you might have a chance to survive. This cannot be allowed." Their first move, to target their last common target, Benjamin Diaz, to find out what's going on. The game wasn't over yet. John and Jane Smith worked together seamlessly. While John navigated the building's plumbing, Jane guided him from the outside, making it look almost too easy. One by one, they eliminated the guards and quickly captured Benjamin Dan. They rented a secluded room to interrogate him, determined to find out why both their agencies wanted him dead. Under pressure, Benjamin revealed a letter that explained everything. He was never the real target. He was just bait. Both agencies had known about their marriage from the beginning. The real mission? To make sure one of them took out the other. To make sure both agencies' secrets remained safe. When neither followed through, their bosses decided to take them out together. Before they could process the betrayal, John yanked Benjamin's belt. It was a tracker. The enemy was closing in fast, with heavily armed agents storming the hotel. But when they burst into the interrogation room, Benjamin was alone. Meanwhile, John and Jane escape and hiding. Jane suggested that they split up for a better chance of survival, but John refused. "If we run, we'll be running forever," he said. "Let's finish this together." For once, Jane agreed. They slipped, blending into the shadows, but their enemies weren't far behind. Both of them were well equipped to fight against the enemy.
Talk about this later.
This time, they were backed into a corner, but they would not give up. Without hesitation, the two of them returned to the final battlefield to finish the job. When the smoke cleared, there were only two left, John and Jane Smith, victorious. Trust and teamwork strengthen a relationship. John and Jane learned that honesty and cooperation turn conflict into strength. Alright guys, thanks for sticking around for this recap. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more awesome movie breakdowns, and hit the bell for more epic movie breakdowns. Let me know what your favorite movie was in the comments. See you next recap.